we find out that Waymo, of all things, have you heard anything else about this Waymo situation?
Just that they aren't paying any taxes for the road like all the other vehicles. I mean, they have to, I don't know. I haven't really dug into it, but
Crazy.
I will tell you this. There's a big fight down at the Capitol. I don't know if it's coming up this year, but it's always, and I don't mean like a big fight, but it's always a big topic that gets fought down there, which is, should we be taxing electric vehicles somehow because of the wear and tear on the road? And the combustion engine vehicles pay tax on gas that portions go back to the state for transportation, right? And registration fees and everything else. Well, the big question is, how do you get the electric vehicles to pay for their fair share of the road for wear and tear if they don't get gasoline? Now, I think the small percentage of electric cars are very few to all the gas-powered vehicles on the road today. I'm also a conservative and a Republican, and I will not vote for a tax or a fee on anything. So the argument is, should we tax them or not? I'm on the side that I say, no, I don't think we should tax them. Now the Waymo thing surfaces. They're not paying any taxes for the roads, but they're driving on the roads. How many Waymo vehicles are there? I mean, what, a dozen? Maybe, I don't know. I have no idea. 100? I don't know. It's an interesting conversation. I think you've just lumped that in with the electric vehicles and figure out what to do. It's one of those things I don't want to tax or raise fees because I've told my voters I would never do that, and I haven't yet. But I also look at the percentage of cars compared to the gas cars, and I don't know if it's making a big difference or not. I do think the Doge in the U.S. government is making a splash with cutting out waste and fraud and just abuse in our tax dollar. I think we have the same here in Arizona. Abuse, fraud, taxation is plenty, as is, and we lowered our tax to 2.5%, and we still have been ends meet with our income tax going to 2.5%. I'd love to get to zero. I think we are a very healthy state. I think if you grow the state with population, with having a low tax or a zero tax, you'll get that money somewhere else with just the economy booming. So I don't believe we need to raise taxes or fees. I do believe we can continue to grow this state and continue to be healthy with revenue. But there's probably some fraud and abuse of our tax dollars as well in this state. But we're the legislative branch. We're not the executive branch. And DOGE is the executive branch in the U.S. government and D.C. And they're making a splash. I wish I could hire a bunch of people in my committee to go out and start going through thousands of pages of departments to slash and cut. I don't have that authority, but we are looking at the budget. I am looking at the 4,000 pages of stuff, and I will come out with some recommendations on what we can reduce here in the state. I do it every year on a middle school side. We look at the budget. There's a lot of things we can cut. 100,000 here, 200,000 there, million here. Some people say that's a lot of money, and it is. When you got a $15 billion budget, $100,000 is like a quarter to your pocket right now. So yeah, if we can cut the quarters out, which is the hundreds of thousands of dollars, it adds up. If we can start cutting some millions of dollars, great. I think the universities are getting hundreds of millions every year, which I don't think they should be getting. I also think we squandered a few surpluses in the past 5 years that we could have really, really used differently. I remember my first year, we had a $5 billion surplus. We should have built a brand new Capitol. We really should have. We should have built a brand new Capitol because that is a dilapidated building down there. It's the worst in the country, and it's good for the people to have that. If we had a beautiful campus, state building, House and Senate, governor's building somewhere else on that land, we have enormous space there. We could have state-of-the-art facilities for the public to come down, freely walk around, and participate in both sides, House and Senate, quickly. And then also just the camaraderie that we can build down there with legislators all being in the same building. The synergy is incredible that we could build. We don't have any of that right now. We're in two separate concrete block buildings. There is no Capitol. That is a museum. There's no commonality of us to conjugate and eat lunch or eat breakfast with the senators and the representatives and the governor's office. There's absolutely zero synergy down there. It really needs to be rebuilt. I think we could have done that easily with a fraction of that 5 billion surplus. And then we would have been reaping those rewards today with the state of Arizona, and all the citizens could have participated a little bit deeper in their state government.
What do you think about the deficit right now?
Uh, of the state right now,
Yeah.
I think you have a big problem at the executive branch. I think you have an issue where maybe some revenue was expected and it didn't come in, or money was spent. But again, this is where you have to really dig back and go through all the departments. I was a corporate guy, right? I was a vice president. We had a pretty big budget in my department. And I remember this. I was a young guy in my mid-20s. They said, you need to spend all your budget. I said, well, why? I didn't spend everything. You know, we have perks for things we can do and things we can buy to give out and customer relations. I said, I didn't spend my whole budget yet. They're like, well, if you don't spend your whole budget, you're not going to get more next year. I said, well, I didn't even use what I have this year. And if government would just do that in all these departments, I think we could cut back. But what we're doing is we're overspending, right? If we don't have 100% employment in a division, well, then we got leftover revenue for that, because if we're down 10% in staff, that's 10% of salaries are not being paid. Somehow they use that and waste it, and then they get more next year. So that's the first start, but that takes a lot of effort. To solve the problem this year, I think the executive branch has a lot of explaining to do, and they're failing to explain. And they're failing to come down with factual information and just, admit it. They screwed up and let's fix it. But we have a divided government, right? We have a Democrat governor, Democrat executive branch, and we have a Republican House and Senate legislative branch. But we're not working together. They should come to the table, admit their faults, and let's figure out a solution. We're working on the solution as the legislative side. But again, both parties have to agree at the end of the day when we sign and die. But, the politics play in place. I think if Katie Hobbs comes out and says she admits she screwed up, I don't think she gets reelected at all. I think the Democrats don't get reelected. So they're covering that up.